Are you searching for a deeper understanding of yourself and your place in the world? Do you yearn for more balance, more peace, and purpose in your life? Well, look no further than the Intuitive Revolution podcast, your trusted source for holistic insights and intuitive guidance. I'm your host, Alicia Farricielli, and I am ready to take you on a journey to inner peace and balanced well-being.
You betcha.
Welcome back to the Intuitive Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Farricielli. And today we have Scott Grace with us. He has such a fascinating story. He's got all kinds of books that have come out about mindful masculinity, all kinds of different things that have to do with intuition, which is what our podcast is about. So I'm super, super excited to dive into his story and all the amazing things he's doing today. So welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you. Let's put the key in the ignition and talk about intuition.
Let's do it. So intuition, obviously something we're born with, but how did you innately get to that point of where you just kind of, I guess, rediscovered that you had intuition? Take us to your story.
I would say through creativity and play.
Ooh.
Music, creativity, play. I stumbled upon it. I didn't realize I was using my intuition to create lyrics. And when I was in a state of play, and I wasn't trying to do anything or access anything, and my heart was open, interesting things would start to happen. Like I was in my 20s, and I was waiting for an airport. I was waiting in an airport for the plane to take off, and it was a 2-hour layover. So I took out my guitar, and I was just strumming, and people started to listen, and a couple of other guitarists came along. This is before 9/11, and we were just having a concert in the airport. People, maybe about 60 people were singing along or just listening. Tucson, Arizona, very laid back town. And we were doing everything from the Beatles to Leaving on a Jet Plane by John Denver and Big Old Jet Airliner by Steve Miller. Well, anyway, so I heard a little voice, a prompt say in my head, say, sing Amazing Grace. And I wasn't wanting to get religious or spiritual because that's not what this was about.
Right.
So I sort of like passed on that, and the voice got louder and it said, sing Amazing Grace now. So I started singing Amazing Grace. Everybody sang along, and a man came by, and he was wearing a very, very formal suit, and he had tears coming down his eyes. And when the song was over, he said, I am in Tucson for my mother's funeral, and her favorite song was just played at the funeral, Amazing Grace. And I was just passing by, and when I heard it being sung, I felt her presence telling me that she's all right and she'll always be with me. That was the first time I actually heard an inner voice and listened and saw what happened.
That is beautiful. So it's the inner voice is that, hey, we need to touch this other person. So it wasn't an inner voice kind of guiding you to do something for yourself, really. It was an inner voice saying this person needs a little extra love and attention, and a little more care to kind of hold them. And that one song was a way to bridge that, to get that
yes
to that person.
All the voice said was sing Amazing Grace. Didn't give me the reasons.
I've had those voices. It's kind of like, oh, okay, what? You're like, and then it's like you kind of ignore it. And then it's like so like specific. So I know my intuition is, because we're human, we want to ignore a lot of what goes on. It's like, oh no, that's just my whatever going. I'm just making that up. But then it's like this big boom, like, no, you have to do this. And so I kind of had I've told a similar, not really similar story, but I had this that was in Savannah, Georgia this past weekend, and it was freezing. It was like 20 something degrees outside, wind blowing, and I had a toboggan on. And I'm from Florida. I'm not used to this. So I was like, I had my toboggan, and it's like this voice is like, go give this woman who is seemed to be unhomed. She had a towel wrapped around her in this extremely frigid weather. Go give her your toboggan. I was like, but my head is cold. And it's like this little tugging that kept coming back. And it's like, no, go give her your toboggan. Go give her your hat. Go give it to her. So I walked over and gave it to her. I hopefully that made a huge impact in her day and stuff too. But it's like those little things, I look back years ago, I would have just intuitively ignored it and been kind of like, no, it's cold. I'm going to get, I'm overcoming. I just told him I was overcoming being sick. I don't want to get any more sick than I was at that time. So, but when we listen to our intuition, we start to see beautiful things start to happen. So what's some of your experience behind all seeing the beauty that comes out of listening to your intuition?
My favorite thing in the world is to experience how interconnected we are. Intuition is one of the ways in which, like, I can pick up on the bandwidth when my heart is open, what somebody wants to hear or needs, or a song that's going to melt them. It's beautiful. It's the heart connections that make it all worthwhile for me.
So talk a little bit about heart connections. What are some ways that people can, let's go back. So we're talking about intuition.
Oh, yes.
Most of our listeners are pretty familiar with what intuition is, or they probably wouldn't be on that, so they're kind of getting a little familiar. What are some ways that people can really, do you believe that people can really start to tap into that intuitive knowledge and ability that we have?
Well, I think by being really interested in it, you're on the road and you'll be attracted to whatever you need. Meditation. I went to a clairvoyance school. There has to be a thirst for it, and then a gradual building of trust, of trusting that you already know. You don't have to know how you know. You don't know that you know. You could just, like, okay, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm seeing, depending on whether you're developing clairaudience, clairsentience, to begin to trust and be willing to be wrong and make mistakes. And you're like in school, you're in the laboratory, you get to experiment. So freedom to not do it right is so important.
I love that. You're giving yourself the grace to not be perfect about it. And I also love the fact that you brought up it's gradually, because people think, oh, it's just like, boom, I have to start trusting. But I always tell people, if you don't trust the little things through intuitively, how are you going to trust the big things that come in that you really need to tune into your intuition for?
Yeah.
So it's a little things of starting to trust yourself. And I love and thank you for bringing that up, because if we want to go from 0 to 100 and be perfect the next day without having to go through the trusting process, to me, was and developing the skills instead of just already coming in like, bam, they're developed.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think most of us really want instant sight, instant third eye opening. It's very jarring, and gradual is so gentle, to gradually open up to this new side of the brain that hasn't been developed all that much in our culture. And that's important to realize, is that there's just a whole side of the brain that's been neglected in our upbringing. And accessing and developing and exercising the right side of the brain, it's going to take time.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty, to me, the beauty of it is the actual process. To me, when I started to develop it, and I think I had developed mine way before I actually was allowing it to me to believe it, if that makes sense. As I started having the ability, I think early on. And so I just blocked it all out. And between 20 years of my life. And so as it started to come back into it, it still was a gradual process of learning. And that learning to trust was such a huge breaking points in my life, brought back so many beautiful experiences and things that if I just went straight into it, I wouldn't have got to experience that. And so I think that's, to me, has brought me as to be such a stronger person. And I'm sure that same was what happened to you too, starting to get kind of develop into trust into this intuitive ability that we have.
Yes. And one of the things I think was crucial for me is to let go of external modalities that, like I get dependent on psychics and seers, and I love having my cards read. And there was a time where I gave it so much weight. It was like my compass was outside of me in somebody else. And, I wrote a song to take my power back from that kind of thing. And I'd love to share it with you and your listeners.
Absolutely.
Great. Just happen to have a guitar handy.
Always got to be guitar.
Sometimes it seems your own intuition is the last you consult. You Try a few psychics, a therapist, and maybe a cult. Finally, in the moment of cosmic despair, you reach deep inside and find there's something there. And you find what life is about from the inside out. I've been practicing my follow the leader since back in my youth. I went from mommy to swami and back again to get at the truth. I met a real life guru. I said, show me your stuff. She said, my spiritual fireworks are not enough. You gotta find out what your life is about from the inside out. Well, there's psychics and there's teachers trying to show you the ropes. Politicians on a mission to acquire your votes. Everybody's saying my way is the highway for you. But what feels right to one might not be gospel for two. Sometimes it seems your intuitive channel isn't coming in clear. But did you notice that the volume is controlled by your desire to hear? To get maximum reception from your inner TV, you must be open to accept your own authority. And then you find what life is about from the inside out. Inside out. And then you find out what your life is about from the inside out. Inside out. It's time to find out what your life is about from the inside out.
I love it. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And I love the part that you said talking about, we want to give so much credit and sometimes we want other people to give us the answers. And I feel that too. It's like, I love other psychics, other things, but I know that if I want the truthness and I want to grow from it, I'm going to have to go inside myself and meditate and go through the procedures of calling in my guides and for them to give me the answers and for me to get the answers for myself. And so it could be fun and it's a great thing, but I know that to balance that out with what's actually inside of me intuitively versus what other people are telling me. Because I mean,
You betcha.
On this podcast, I get all kinds of people saying, oh, this and this and this, happened. And so if I don't feel it intuitively, I kind of give it with a grain of salt. But if I feel like it's an intuitive message that's really coming in for me, then I'll dig a little deeper into it and do some deep meditation through it. So I'm glad you brought that out. And there's such a huge thing now. It's like, oh, we have to go look for everyone else. We're looking for answers from the media, from everywhere other option that's coming around instead of just going, like you said, into to the inside of us, to the inside out. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. So tell us a little bit about your books that you've written.
I've written 4 books. The most recent one is called Mindful Masculinity, a book for men and the women who love them. And even though I wrote it for men, more women are reading it and reviewing it on Amazon, which I kind of expected. Its purpose is to teach men to value and develop both healthy masculinity, but also the right side of their brains. Innate intelligence rather than educated intelligence. Inspiration instead of just perspiration. To have both working together. And it's mostly stories. It's like a memoir, really, of my own journey. And there's some humor and there's some poetry. And it's just there's a lot there.
There is.
And there's and there's other books. I don't know.
We're just going to talk about this one today. Yeah. Yeah, I love that you wrote this because I think we're in such a culture now where or divided masculinity to where it's, toxic masculinity has been going on for so long. But then we just want to dismiss and be like, oh, we have to only be in our feminine states of mind. And that is so unhealthy too. So it's the balance of it that comes in that we have to learn to balance it out. And I think people like you stepping up and teaching others, even other women like myself, that we need to have this balance that not all masculinity is bad, that we need that portions of all of ourselves to be able to function to a higher standard and to have the experiences that we need to have in life.
Amen, sister.
Yeah. So I'm very happy that you wrote that. Tell us some more about, so if they want to order the book, what type of, what are they to expect? Give us a little more synopsis of what's inside the book.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's paperback, it's Audible, and it's Kindle. But the Audible is really cool because I read it, I improvise comedy, poetry, I throw in little clips of my songs, and then I have a 3-hour bonus concert at the end. So I always recommend people get the Audible.
Yeah.
Um, well, it covers 50 chapters, and it covers 50 different things that men deal with in the modern world. Let me give you an example. The inner critic. Now, of course, women have an inner critic too, but the way that men have been programmed that they can only feel lovable and good about themselves through their performance, through proving their masculinity by doing, that's where a man finds his identity and self-esteem. And if he's not doing it right, well, then the inner critic comes along and tries to use force or guilt or disapproval to get him back on track. But the inner critic also is the one doing the judging that what he's doing is not enough. So a man's ego mantra is, I'm not enough. And he ends up either feeling really bad about himself and failing, so to speak, or overcompensating and being like a superstar deep down, all from that platform of still believing I'm not enough. So in the book, I do use poetry sometimes to illuminate the shadowy aspects of masculinity. So I'll give you an example. Talking about the inner critic. The critic will travel with you on this earth and be your companion for worser or worse. It pretends it's your friend, your bestest amigo. And it pours on the guilt. That's the beverage of your ego. It's there to protect you and help you be strong. So it has to remind you, you've done it all wrong. You're weak and you're lazy and you don't have a clue. That's your drill sergeant critic trying to motivate you. The critic wants you to be all you can be, so it gives you these pep talks all day and for free. The places you'll go and the guilt trips you'll travel, as the critic plays judge and bangs down on its gavel. But you always can get some relief from your shame by projecting it onto the others you'll blame. For that is the critic at its beastiest best. It nurses its grievances close to its chest. Republicans, liberals, your parents, your ex. The world is just teeming with folks to correct. If only these fools could conform to your ways, you could get on with life without further delays. Now I'm going to stop there. It's about a 6-minute poem, so I'm not going to do the whole
beautiful.
thing.
Yeah. So we have men. I do have a lot of females that listen to the show, but for men, by men I mean that have a more masculine approach to life. What are some things that they can do to start to tap into the good, the more less? I'm going to call it less toxic qualities, so people understand what that is. To start to embrace this without the guilt and the shame and the not enoughness. What are some things that they could do?
There's so many things.
So many things. I know that was like an open-ended question.
Everybody is an individual, a unique snowflake. And so when in my private practice, I don't have like the 5 things men must do, or, everybody is. So with that said, one thing is to become aware of your inner dialogue. What is motivating you? Mindfulness is the essence of the path. For a man to be interested in what's under his psyche as much as he's interested in what's under the hood of his car is so important. And usually what makes most men afraid to look under the hood is shame. I'm not good enough. I'm going to find something rusty There's a song of mine. I used to be afraid of looking under the hood. I was scared what was there was rusty and no good. Then I found what I was made of was nothing to be afraid of. I gave up a life of panic when I turned to my inner mechanic. Yeah.
I love the enthusiasm.
One thing that really impacted my journey was recognizing how taboo it was to admit fear to myself, especially to anyone else. Got to be cool. Got to, how are you? Fine, great, all is well, And if I can't see fear, if I can't feel fear, if I can't own fear, it owns me. And from behind the scenes, it makes all the decisions in my life. So I teach men to not be as afraid of fear as they've been taught to be.
I love that. So how freeing does it feel to be able to put down all the armors that you put on to protect yourself from fear, to actually embrace that portion of yourself? How freeing does that feel?
It depends on which moment you ask. There are times where I say,
I know it's a scary thing, but once you learn to do that, to me, it's such a it's the process of becoming fearless in a way.
Oh, no, not me. I'm not fearless at all. But the rewards are when I am able to be aware and to let flow my emotions. When I'm able to tremble, I can also feel so much courage and joy. And, courage is just the ability to face fear. It's not the absence of fear. My heart has opened to the point where I can cry every day. Not just for myself, not just my own life, but for what's going on in LA. When I talk to people who are hurting, I can feel something that I was too guarded to feel for most of my life.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the mindfulness portions. Like when you start being more mindful in your life, you start to see the emotions, the beauty that's in things. I think all emotions are beautiful personally. They're not comfortable. They're not, they don't feel good at times, but I think there's some beauty behind every single emotion because it's bringing us closer to truth, closer to be that openness, to get out of that box, to be able to be who we truly innately are, closer into our intuition, our intuitive abilities.
There is an important relationship between our emotions and our intuition. Very important. In fact, if you can't feel your feelings, it's very difficult to access intuitive information. Because sometimes it's like a gut feeling, right? And if you have a bunch of shoulds in your mind, like I should clean the house, I should, I would suggest writing them all down and burning them. Mm-hmm. Because it destroys the ability to live through the intuition. You're living by other people's rules and ancient standards that haven't been questioned. And the intuition may say, go to the spa, stay in bed, be kind to yourself, replenish your energy. And your list of shoulds, it takes you all out of that. You can't hear a still small voice telling you what the path of self-kindness can be if you're dominated by the rules that were sold to you.
Yep. We're so unkind. I feel like as a human race, we're so unkind to ourselves. We're unkind to ourselves than we are to anyone else, typically. And so in order to get back to the intuitive abilities, we have, like you said, we have to be kind to ourselves. We have to nurture ourselves. We have to baby ourselves. We have to treat ourselves as we're the number one thing in our life, because we are. And to me, it's not a selfishness thing. It's a thing to where we can't help other people. We can't do the things that we need to do if we're not filling our cup up and putting ourselves first. Yeah. I think we as a society have that so mixed up. It's like we have to do it for everything for everyone else. And I say this coming from probably more of a woman's perspective. And I know men do have to go through the same thing as well too. As they have certain responsibilities and things that they have to do, but that doesn't really pertain and have anything to do with their own benefit of anything. And then it drains us. And then we're on the should path. We should do this. We should do that. We should do that. And so really stopping that, like you said, stopping that noise, getting it out of the way. I think just sitting in quiet time and reflection every day is so beneficial.
Yes, I really should.
I think it is. Do I do it every day? Almost. I'd really honestly try to spend about an hour in the morning doing that, but it's not every single morning. There are days that I get pulled into the shoulds and the woods
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
have tos and
I,
all the
I
things.
I've been practicing just at least 5 minutes every hour or two.
Oh, I like that.
It really, yeah, it's just more practical in this
Yeah.
modern world. Setting aside an hour, it's just for me, I know I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
But little mini meditations.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to add that into little 5 minutes that on my timer. That's going to be my should
Yeah.
because I'm taking care of myself. It's okay, should.
Yeah.
So as we're kind of wrapping up, what are some key moments, some key things you want to leave the audience with?
I would say play. Play more. Play is the kingdom. That is where we learn the most. That is where we grow. That is where we practice being intuitive, spontaneous, letting go of the rules, the shoulds, the critic. What's left but the divine child that is hooked up, G, to the infinite. And you access that hookup by being more playful and carefree and spontaneous and be a child again.
So Scott's given you permission, listeners, to be a child. And actually, I'm going to chat that up. That's your homework. I'm giving our listeners homework this time is to spend a day being playful, intuitive, and take the shoulds out. Take all the things you have to do, come out of that little box and be a little kid. Just whatever lights your little heart up, just go do that. Just spend the day doing that and see the difference it's going to make. So, yes, I love that. Thank you for sharing
I know you
everything.
said wrap up, but I want to share one more song. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Share away.
All right. And let's send people to my website if they're interested.
Yes, absolutely. So what's the best way for them to contact you? And obviously
ScottSongs.com. ScottSongs.com. All right, let's get ready to laugh and sing and play and be a kid again. When you've been hiding from too many rules, time to throw yourself in the pool, inviting you to be a fool. 'Cause life's a playground, not a school. Hello, I am your long lost part, your freedom child in your heart of hearts. Childlike but not childish, playful but not powerless, responsible to spirit's call, driving all the slave drivers up the wall. When you're possessed by your perfectionist, I will be your exorcist. I can drive the demons out, save your smile from your pout. I'll break all of your eggshells one by one, expand our straight and narrow with a little thing called fun. Just a little thing called fun. Do-do-ba-dum. The freedom child can cut you loose when your head is hanging in a noose. 'Cause life is too precious, life is too short to be a full-time worry ward. If you've been dried up from too many rules, let me throw you in the pool, inviting you to be a fool. 'Cause life's a playground, not just a school. Let's break all of our eggshells one by one, expand our straight and narrow with a little thing called fun. Do-do, 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 do-do. Alicia Farricielli. How do you pronounce your name? How's your last name pronounced?
Farricielli.
Say again?
Farricielli.
Alicia Farricielli. She's got an owl in her screen. She's going away from the camera, inspired to get some ice cream. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for your open mind. It's really been a beautiful 30 minutes, but it's time. Goodbye.
That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And thank you so
You're
much for coming
welcome.
on our show and sharing all your knowledge, all your beautiful musical songs, abilities, intuitive tips. Listeners, go grab those books, especially the Mindful Masculinity. All his information will be in the show notes, so go click on the link there, order the books, and comment below and let us know what your thoughts were, things that you learned as well. So again, Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.